Oh, that intro sounded like an old arcade game. Do you remember old arcade games from the 1980s? I remember old arcade games from the 1980s. Welcome to Ready Player None, where we cast a critical eye at lazy nostalgia bait. I've got this book, Ready Player One, by Ernest Cline. A couple of years ago, it was made into a big movie with Steven Spielberg on board. I haven't seen the movie. I haven't read the book before. This is going to be a blind read-through where I pretty much dissect each chapter as I go through. Probably one chapter per episode. That'll keep us going, right? So, never seen the film before. Never read the book before. This particular book came from a charity shop. £2. Ernest Cline has got as much money as he deserves from my purchasing of this book, which is to say, none. Now, I don't know when this particular book was published. I mean, it's covered in reviews, absolutely covered in pull quotes and so on. Oh, yeah, there we go. At the back here, it says there's a film adaptation directed by Steven Spielberg, so clearly at some point after the film came out, 2018, I got this 2019, which suggests to me that someone bought this book in the big marketing hype for the movie and gave it away to charity, which is a good sign of this book's quality, yeah? Let's have a look. Okay, so if you haven't heard of Ready Player One before, it's the year 2044, and the real world has become an ugly place. We're out of oil, we've wrecked the climate. Famine, poverty, and disease are widespread. Like most of humanity, Wade Watts escapes this depressing reality by spending his waking hours jacked into the Oasis, a sprawling virtual utopia where you can be anything you want to be. Yeah, so it's escapism meets everything you remember from the 1980s. Came under a lot of flack for just being a rehash of all of those things that the author remembers from his childhood. And I think the funniest part about this being such a mashup of ideas is that the pull quote they've chosen for the cover from USA Today, enchanting Willy Wonka meets The Matrix. Which, yeah. Do you like things? Do you like two things? I got some t-shirts for you. So, we've got 3 pages, in fact, all called Praise for Ready Player One. Well, okay, I'm not expecting them to put in, negative reviews in the front of here, but these are just so surface level. Ready Player One expertly mines a copious vein of 80s pop culture, catapulting the reader on a light-speed adventure in an advanced but backward-looking future. If this book were a living room, it would be wood-panelled. If it were shoes, it would be high tops. And if it were a song, well, it would have to be Eye of the Tiger. Yeah, I've heard of the 1980s as well. I wasn't alive in the 1980s, but it feels like that's the only type of nostalgia we get these days. Imagine Dungeons and Dragons and an 80s video arcade made hot, sweet love, and their child was raised in Azeroth. If you're not already experiencing a nerdgasm at the thought, I don't want to know you. Well, you, John Scalzi, New York Times bestselling author of Old Man's War, are disgusting. That's horrible. I don't want to think about Dungeons and Dragons as a concept making love to anything. Pure geek heaven. Ugh. Oh, he's got a retro heart. Ugh. Managed to jack into the nervous system of some warm collective geek dream nostalgia of the 70s and 80s. Ugh. With a story that references war games, family ties, and Aladdin's Castle arcades, along with so many other surprises. Should your review just be a list of things that you remember, as much as the novel is? Or should you just... Am I nitpicking? Or I haven't even hit the first page of the book, and I'm nitpicking already. Right, Ready Player One then. Starts with what I assume is chapter 0. For some reason, the chapter numbers are 4 digits long. I'm hoping that doesn't mean there's more than 1,000 chapters.
because this would be a really long-running show / podcast if it was. Okay, chapter 0. Okay, so we start off with the inciting incident. This guy, James Halliday, has died during the night. James Halliday is established here as being the video game designer responsible for creating the Oasis, which is this alternate reality game where people escape from the famine and the death and the so on. I mean, the third paragraph, this chapter is presented in first-person view, and I've just ground to a halt because he's quoted Ghostbusters. Dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria. Well, no. The point of that line was to be the lesser thing in a list of apocalyptic scenarios, so yeah, well done. I remember Ghostbusters. I've seen Ghostbusters. So this guy Halliday has had enormous news coverage about his death, and he's got an obscenely large inheritance, but no heirs. Yeah, this hermit with no friends and no relations. He's got his will and testament coming out, which he's done in the form of a video that every single Oasis user has received in email. Oh, we're still using email. A famous eccentric, Halliday had harboured a lifelong obsession with the 1980s, the decade during which he'd been a teenager, and Anorak's invitation, that's the title of his video message, was crammed with obscure 80s pop culture references, nearly all of which were lost on me the first time I viewed it. That's going to be a capsule of this review, isn't it? So he's put out this 5-minute Anorak's invitation, and we're given a play-by-play here. We're told that this is very meticulously detailed film that this guy's put out, but the prose here is also going very meticulously in the detail. It's telling us this guy Halliday, he's appearing 30 years younger, he's wearing a Space Invaders t-shirt and dancing around with 80s high school teenagers, and he's dancing to Oingo Boingo. Alright, okay, I'm hoping this isn't going to be a recurring thing. There's footnotes explaining to you the pop cultural references in this tiny video. Just having a flip through here, I can't see any other footnotes. But it wouldn't surprise me if they were. So, Halliday now stands at the front of a funeral parlour next to an open casket. And then the footnote, careful analysis of the scene reveals that all of the teenagers behind Halliday are actually extras from various John Hughes teen films who have been digitally cut and pasted into the video. A second, much older Halliday lies inside the casket, his body emaciated and ravaged by cancer. Shiny quarters cover each of his eyelids. Oh, hang on, I've got the wrong... My terrible vision has shown that I'm reading the wrong footnotes for the wrong things. So the teen dancers are all from John Hughes films, digitally and cut and pasted into this video, which is impressive use of cut and paste, it must be said. His surroundings in the funeral parlour are from the 1989 film Heathers. Halliday appears to have digitally recreated the funeral parlour set and then inserted himself into it. Okay. There's older Hallidays in the casket. Shiny quarters cover each of his eyelids. Third footnote. High-resolution scrutiny reveals that both quarters were minted in 1984. Thanks. The younger Halliday gazes down at the corpse of his older self with mock sadness and then turns to address the assembled mourners. Fourth footnote. All on one page. The mourners are actually all actors and extras from the same funeral scene in Heathers. Winona Ryder and Christian Slater are clearly visible in the audience, sitting near the back. Yeah, thanks. Okay. You've seen Heathers as well. I haven't seen Heathers. I've seen Ghostbusters. So, this guy Halliday begins to read out his will. I don't know. I mean, the first thing he says, being of sound mind and disposing memory. Which, are you of sound mind? If your first instinct to create a video, Will, is dancing with teenagers in the 80s to Oingo Boingo before pretending to cry over your future corpse in the funeral parlour from Heathers... Okay, so Halliday's riches include his gregarious simulation systems company, a controlling share of that, and a fortune valued in excess of $240 billion. This feels like first draft. Okay, actual dialogue. Now, I'm sure you're wondering, what do you have to do to get your hands on all this moolah? Well, hold your horses, kids. I'm getting to that. Halliday snaps his fingers again and the vault disappears. In the same instant, Halliday shrinks and morphs into a small boy wearing brown corduroys and a faded The Muppet Show t-shirt. We've got another footnote here. Halliday now looks exactly as he did in a school photo taken in 1980 when he was 8 years old. Why not incorporate that into the prose? You're already telling us exactly what he looks like. Why not just give us, in context, this is the thing he was going for? He's in a late 70s room now. There's an Atari 2600 involved. Oh, it's Adventure. Do you remember Adventure? I actually played Adventure. He's playing Adventure on the Atari, and he's telling you the story of the programmer who hid his name in the game. You have to find a tiny, pixel-sized key, and it would lead you to this secret room where this text would scroll down saying created by Warren Robinet. And in fact, he's calling it the very first video game Easter egg. Okay, so Halliday's avatar in the Oasis is called Anorak, hence the name earlier. It's a fitting name, considering. He's a tall, robed wizard with a slightly more handsome version of the adult Halliday's face. So, wish fulfillment there. He's hidden his own Easter egg in the Oasis, and whoever finds it will get his fortune. Hence the Willy Wonka comparison. Okay, so there's 3 keys, 3 challenges, and whoever gets all 3 keys will reach the end where the prize awaits. The keys are copper, jade, and clear crystal. In essentially giving us stage directions for this video, he describes that the copper key hangs around Anorak's neck, and the 2 other keys vanish, which there's just enough attention called towards that I think it's going to become important later, which is why I'm mentioning it now. 2 more footnotes on this page. Yeah, the first footnote says, oh, there's a bunch of treasure, but there's several home computers and D&D dice. And the immediately following footnote says that it looks like a painting by Jeff Easley on the cover of the Dungeon Master's Guide from 1983. So far, we've had 3 set dressings explicitly borrowed from other sources. This is my problem, that so far it's just ripping other stuff off. Okay, so he sets this challenge, this Easter egg hunt, part of it including his website, which contains first a scoreboard, like old arcade games, with JDH, James Donovan Halliday, followed by 6 zeros, so I'm guessing that's going to fill up later. There's also a downloadable copy of what he's calling Anorak's Almanac, undated journal entries, thousands of pages long. Most of his entries was his stream of consciousness observations on various classic video games, science fiction and fantasy novels, movies, comic books, and 80s pop culture, mixed with humorous diatribes denouncing everything from organised religion to diet soda. Which I feel like is the notes Ernest Cline made before writing this book. So the Easter egg hunt is becoming known as The Hunt, capital H, The Hunt, and it's just become the one thing. It's gone viral, lads! And it's this that has caused a global fascination with 1980s pop culture. By 2041, spiked hair and acid-washed jeans were back in style, and covers of hit 80s pop songs by contemporary bands dominated the music charts. People who had actually been teenagers in the 1980s, all now approaching old age, had the strange experience of seeing the fads and fashions of their youth embraced and studied by their grandchildren. You remember the good old days? When I was a child, things were better than the things that we have now. Okay, boomer. Sorry. I'm just going to read this paragraph to you. A new subculture was born, composed of the millions of people who now devoted every free moment of their lives to searching for Halliday's egg. At first, these individuals were known simply as egg hunters, but this was quickly truncated to the nickname Gunters. You're calling all your main characters Gunters? I'm not on board with this. During the first year of the hunt, being a Gunter was highly fashionable, and nearly every Oasis user claimed to be one. So a year passes, nobody finds that. None of these Gunters finds the secret key in the Oasis. The search dies down. Nobody knows what they're looking for. Years pass. Each year, more Gunters called it quits. So he's made it too difficult to find. Then, On the evening of February 11th, 2045, an avatar's name appeared at the top of the scoreboard for the whole world to see. After 5 long years, the copper key had finally been found by an 18-year-old kid living in a trailer park on the outskirts of Oklahoma City. That kid was me. Okay, so this is written in past tense by the future... I know his name's Wade. The future Wade. Spoilers for next chapter, by the way, his name's Wade. Looking back when he was a gunter. I cannot take that word seriously. So that's it for chapter 0. The next page is blank, and the page following says level 1 in big letters. This has been Ready Player None. I've been Gherkin. You can find me on Twitter, The Last Gherkin, Tumblr, The Last Gherkin, YouTube, The Last Gherkin, where you can watch this with subtitles, or the podcast version is on thelastgherkin.podbean.com. Till next time, stay frosty, gunters.